I'll say like, hey, I'm whatever. And then once
Nate, you're Nate.
Which one is it? Which one am I?
Nate, you're Nate.
Well, hey, I'm Nate.
And I'm Rach.
And this is Pew Pew Time. Now, in an effort to expedite our process a little bit, we're going to jump right into a quick recap. Rach, you got that ready?
I do. So in this episode, Time to Fly, we open with Sabine clearly having restarted her training. Pretty quickly, we hear from Hera. She is talking to the senators about what is in question, the concern that we encountered on Corellia, which was in the last episode, in the shipyard there. Their conversation leads to Hera being rather disappointed that they're not going to do anything about it. They don't see anything that is a concern. And when we get back to Ahsoka and Sabine, they've reached the Denab system. And lo and behold, comms are blocked. So they get out of hyperspace early. They are met with difficulty. A lot of fighting happens. They discover the Eye of Sion, which we knew was being built already, but now they've encountered it. And then as it wraps up is more just the point of discovery and a question mark, realizing that this is likely a hyperspace ring of some kind, probably to get them to the galaxy where we believe Thrawn is, and hopefully Ezra. The end. How's that?
Done. Perfect.
Done. All right. This has been great.
Yeah.
Thanks for coming to Pew Pew Time. No.
Yeah. So as she said, this is episode 3, Time to Fly. One of the things that we both were finding really interesting is Sabine's growth as well. I mean, I said in a previous episode, I feel like they stunted her intentionally so that she can grow again, right? So that they can take her character and give her a new arc and give her new ways to grow and everything. And obviously, growing into a Jedi is a very different and new adventure. But anyway, so the first thing I had written down was, Huyang keeps sort of digging at Sabine, and I'm still not entirely sure what the reason is for it, because I had this theory going that I really liked, which was he knows that she's a Mandalorian, so he can't treat her like he would treat any other Jedi, or any other Padawan, which would be, like at times like a kind word and this and that. Like he needs to challenge her. He needs to kind of like get her ire up a little bit, maybe, And so like there were these jabs like, oh yeah, well, like if I could compare you to every Padawan that ever existed, you're the worst. You fall short of all of them. I'm talking about the use of the Force.
Yeah.
And I was like, oof, yeah. But like, again, I mean, she's a Mandalorian, so maybe she needs to be motivated in different ways.
Right.
So that was what I was thinking. I was like, I kind of like this. I kind of like where this is going. It's going to turn around and be fun at the end when she realizes, it's the Mr. Miyagi Daniel-san thing. It's like, the wax the floor, or sand the floor, whatever, wax on, wax off, it's like in the end you find out all along he's been teaching you the moves you needed to know. And it's ridiculous, but I thought like this will be cool.
I mean, that's the hope. That's the hope rather than he's just a droid and like C-3PO, he just says what he's thinking all the time. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I mean, and that's certainly
more fun
one eventuality too.
Right.
But he had this he said a couple of times like, oh, I don't think she's ready for that. You know what I mean? Like, so they started out this with, they were training with, when I wrote it down, they call them
the
Boken
Grievous
sabers,
style.
which I looked it up.
Yeah, the Boken sabers. That was kind of a cool.
Bokens. It's actually like a training sword. Like I didn't know it. It's like in real life,
Yeah.
So I looked it up and I thought like, oh, they're using like wooden like kendos. Like I remember I had friends that used those, that bought them at like souvenir shops in like tourist towns and screwed around with them when we worked at camp. So it's like I could totally just whatever. But it was fun to me that again it's grounded in reality a little bit. But he's showing her, Grievous style. It was fun. He had like something like 4 arms going out with these sort of holographic blades. Like, I guess the idea is targeting certain parts of the blade and some of that kind of thing.
Sure.
But it was cool. It was showing like she seems to have some proficiency and stuff. But like when Ahsoka comes up and she's like, "Well, how's she doing?" And he's like, "Not bad." but also not good. You know, like
Yeah.
it was just kind of this
Right.
like, hey, all right, progress. No,
All right,
well,
great.
whatever. And they mentioned right then too that it's like her progress is coming from her Mandalorian experience as
Her
a
weapons
weapons
experience.
specialist, and
Right. Yeah.
so it's not feeling the force and like listening and being still and you know, all of
Well,
the
and
sort
we
of
don't really
Jedi.
know how far into her training she got, right? I mean, that's not something
Right.
we've been made aware of.
Right.
So there may have been very
Well,
little actually that happened in that process
yeah.
before everything went to, pot. So
Yeah. Well, it's a good point. And she even sort of says like, she said like, well, you know, it's been a long time, whatever, you know, like she feels like, you know, she's slipped a little bit. She's not where she was before. But anyway, I want to finish my little thought on Huyang's like little digs. I just feel like it just felt like, okay, all right, this is going somewhere. Well, then Ahsoka like sort of confronts him about it when they're together, and she's like, yeah, well, your comments didn't help. And he's like, I was telling the truth. She's really bad, and if this was the Jedi Order, they would have rejected her. And I was like,
yes.
okay. And anyway, so I can't remember exactly what she says. There's a moment where he says like, you know, they couldn't make her a Jedi or something like that. And she says, I don't need her to be a Jedi. I need her to be herself.
Yeah.
Which is an interesting distinction for her to make, because they've still not, at least not openly, like said what's going on here, right? So she's calling her her Padawan. She's her master. Clearly, she was training her in the Jedi ways, but you know, I think I have this written down somewhere. Ahsoka herself, she doesn't call herself a Jedi, you know, and she says,
yeah,
whatever. Like she points out again and again that like the Jedi Order is past, you know, and like they made mistakes, and it's like, to be honest,
right.
You know, the Jedi existed for millennia, right? So there's this kind of like, you know, man, if they lasted that long before falling apart, like maybe they were doing a pretty good job. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
There's this sort of historical thing about empires and how the great empires can only last about 200 years is the idea, right? So it's like, that's Earth empires, right? We're not taking you know, science fiction into account there. But anyway,
yeah,
it's very interesting. I don't know. I worry a little bit that they're setting Huyang up to represent the patriarchy, you know, like old men making rules for a world that has outgrown them or something like that. And I'm just like, I hope they're not being like, this isn't going to be like a, see Huyang, the Jedi were wrong and we're right. You know what I mean? Like it just,
right.
I hope.
Well, and I do think this is, we talk about character arcs. We talk about, you know, growth in Ahsoka, or not Ahsoka. We talk about growth in Sabine and how we're already seeing they're opening that door for her to grow. In some ways, I'm like, Huyang is so about the Jedi Order. They're probably going to at least have some education there. And like one of the things that we kind of were talking about it, but didn't finish that thought of like where Ahsoka is having this like confrontation with Huyang, and she's like, "Hey, you're being hard on her," and he's like, "Yeah, well, she's not very good," and she's like, "I don't need her to be a Jedi. I just need her to be herself, right?" And then Huyang comes back with like, "Well, I mean."
Oh yeah,
you do come from a long line of unconventional Jedi, and it's like he's suddenly realizing, okay, like maybe Jedi can come in different forms. Maybe it's kind of a different thing, and it's more about learning to use the Force, not being a Jedi per se, you know, or whatever.
Yeah, I mean, it certainly is a mixture of they need to listen to each other. They all need to learn from each other, right?
Yeah.
A lot of people love to look at Qui Gon as like the perfect picture of the Jedi because he was the one that Filoni and Lucas, my buddy Dave and George, my close dear friends.
Yeah, just call them by their first names.
Yeah, you know, I mean, like you guys might call them George Lucas and Dave Filoni, but I'll call it just to know that's who I'm talking about.
And all from here on out.
Dave, I have to do it now. Dave and George. They talked at some point, you know, like when about the time. I love when I hear about how Dave Filoni was hired. It's actually a really cool story, and you should look it up sometime because there are these, you know, videos of him talking about it and how he's working for Nickelodeon, all these things. But like he got better than anybody, I guess, else that George had interviewed because he was looking for somebody to help represent him in Lucasfilm, sort of, right? And he got this sort of like, to George, it's all about like Star Wars is about family. You know what I mean? And like, so the Skywalker line and some of that kind of thing, but like, the like the way Dave talks about it is Qui-Gon knew that Anakin needed a father, right? So like he grew up without a father, only a mother, you know, and what he needed from a master was someone to be something of a father to him. But because Qui-Gon died, he couldn't be that, and so Obi Wan came along, but could only be a brother to him, which was good. And like, man, they even call each other brothers at one point. You know, he says, "You were my brother, Anakin." You know, anyway. But it's this really cool thought that it's like he couldn't quite be what Anakin needed, or at least he wasn't what Anakin needed, which was, you know, maybe a firmer hand and more clear guidance from an older, wiser Jedi. You know, But Qui-Gon was known for being. I mean, like, you know, in episode 1, there's this sort of like, you know, you'd be on the council right now if you weren't always going against their wishes, you know?
Yeah.
And like, you know, I don't know. I wish I knew all of the details of how that planned out. I'm sure that there are, you know, like comics or books or something that sort of outline some of those things. But basically saying that, like, you know, he was a part of the Jedi Order. And for the most part, I think he agreed with the Jedi Order. But like, when he felt like they were wrong, he followed his own instincts, his own, you know, whatever, internal code or whatever, you know. So like, that was very. I mean, like, you know, it may very well have been the reason that he wasn't a Jedi Master on the council. So
on the council,
it's an interesting.
I'm sure
Obi Wan Kenobi, Obi Wan Kenobi, I think, was a little more textbook Jedi, certainly than Qui-Gon. But he too, you know, like, Yoda was like, I don't think this is a good idea for you to take him on as your apprentice, you know?
Oh, yeah.
And he's like, I gave Qui-Gon my word. I'm going to do it, you know?
Yeah.
And so it's like, even he is like a little rebellious. Actually, I think that's one of the last lines of episode 1. He says, I sense Qui-Gon's defiance in you, you know? Like, need that, you do not. I love it. Anyway. All that is to say, certainly Anakin was not the average Jedi. And here now, Ahsoka is not the average Jedi. It is funny. I never would have thought about what a weird chain of
the line of Jedis from
Master,
from
Grandmaster,
her.
Great Grandmaster. Yeah. Anyway.
Well, and I think if we're going to talk throwbacks, a little bit, I think it's important to call out the moment that Sabine is, you know, puts on the blast shield, and we get a moment straight out of A New Hope. That's like, you know. Am I supposed to fight? Even her voice gets a little like high pitched, and it reminds me of the way Luke's like, I can't even see anything. You know how he gets how he
with
was
a blast shield down. I can't even see. How am I supposed to fight? That was a nice. That was a nice transition.
That was a fun throwback. Yeah.
No, that was fun. And again, they're not really hiding some of these things. You know, obviously they're trying to.
Oh, that was an obvious.
They're trying to get us old nerds to giggle.
Yeah,
and it worked. It was
absolutely. Fun.
Yeah. But yeah, okay, so she's doing these like various training things, and she's clearly not quite getting it. You know what I mean? And so it's sort of a bummer. But in each thing, there's almost a moment where you're like, maybe she's starting to get it. Right? So like she was doing all right with the training swords, not great, obviously, as you pointed out. And then the blast shield, like Ahsoka's just kind of like tapping her, like sneaking around behind her and tapping her and stuff, you know. And she just keeps whipping around and whatever. But at the very end, there's a moment where like she does anticipate her move a little bit and whatever. You're like,
and she turns and catches the sword. Yeah.
Maybe. Yep. Yeah. Maybe there's in the end, I think Ahsoka just trips her. Because it's kind of like, all right, you're getting this, but you're still not good at this.
But I'm going to prove to you that I'm still better.
Put her in her place a little bit.
Exactly. Yeah. Well, and I think that's why the scene that we see which that's so important, and we kind of are talking about this, you know, that the scene where they're sitting with the little cups, and it's this conversation about the Force, and it's kind of like, you know, Sabine being like, I can't do this, you know, and Ahsoka, I love what Ahsoka said, because she said that with the Force, everybody's got it, right? So everyone has the Force, and she goes, well, then why, you know, I know, but
well, I got to dig into it for a minute, but I'll wait till you're finished with this thought.
Okay, thanks. But I love what Ahsoka says, and I love it in a sense of like it shows us that probably Sabine's going to come around and have at least some control over the Force that is within her or whatever. Because she says training and focus are what define success when it comes to the Force. That it's like practice makes perfect, basically, is what she's saying in a much more eloquent way. But the idea that like, okay, Sabine, what you need is not to focus on how much you're failing, but to keep trying, to keep working on it, to keep whatever, start small and keep working on it. So anyway, that was something that was encouraging, at least, even if it's contrary to kind of the way we've understood the Force at other times, at other points. So
yeah.
Go ahead.
So this is where there were a couple of things that were said here that I felt like, man, you're really setting a precedent now. You know what I mean? Like, Dave has thought a lot of these things through, right? He's been really, really like, I don't know. I know that they're thinking about these things right now. Some things they might just go like,
Sure.
yeah, well, let's just do it, and we'll see what happens on the road. You know? But
Right.
I'm sure that they thought very hard about this. But I don't know. I feel like we talked about this a little bit last episode. But the Force in the original trilogy was this thing that exists in all living things, right? But
Right.
they also talked about how it's stronger in some than it is in others, and that sort of thing, right? The Force is strong with this one, all of that, right? But I don't know if I ever got the impression that anyone could be a Jedi, right? And that's in episode 4, 5, 6, right? So there's a moment where, like Leia has this, like, you have that power too, right? That's what Luke says. You have that power too, which to me says, again, you have it because it runs in our family.
Your bloodline.
Right? Not necessarily
Right,
because, and then episode 1, 2, and 3 come out, and they invent midichlorians. And I say they, I mean George. George and not Dave yet, but George invents midichlorians and decides that is the measure by which we determine how people can use the Force, I guess.
Right.
And that sort of throws a wrench in things a little bit. And so this conversation now is saying, I mean, the midichlorians came up in The Mandalorian also. Grogu and trying to get his blood and trying to create clones that were Force sensitive and that sort of thing, which is a really interesting idea. But it's still, I think what they're trying to say is, for those who don't know, I was an art major. My background is in art, graphic design, and my drawing professor, who I love dearly, he talked about how, like, really what we're doing, anybody could do it. It's not like we are not magical. There's nothing in us that doesn't exist in essentially everyone. But in order for everyone to get to a certain level, like, you got to work hard and whatever. And some people start out with a head start, and so it's like, we have a family member who I'm always trying to convince that she could be an artist if she wanted to. I don't think she wants it, but but she's like, oh, I couldn't do anything. I couldn't do it. And she's adamant that she can't do it. And I'm like, I think you could. It's just a matter of trying and trying.
It's
and
me,
trying
by the
and
way.
trying and trying.
I'm an art prodigy, and I'm not. No, I'm just kidding.
That's not true. I don't know. Maybe you are.
I'm not a good artist. No, please continue.
Anyway, my point just is, I think this is probably saying sort of the same thing, that really, with enough work, maybe anybody could learn to use the Force. With enough work, with enough time, that sort of thing. Anybody could theoretically get the powers of a Jedi in this universe, right?
Right.
But like, maybe it's just that normal average people start out so low on the midichlorian count and don't have the work ethic or the interest or whatever to chase it down.
Yeah.
And so they just, quote unquote, can't do it. You know what I mean? It's like, not that they really can't, but they just they don't have the, it's not built in, and they don't have the interest or the whatever to follow it through. So I'm guessing that's kind of what they're trying to say, is like, she's at a disadvantage because the Force is not starting strong with her. But
for sure,
maybe you work hard, and so that's what I'm hoping for. Is that that this is just like a late bloomer thing, right? Now she is heavily emotionally invested in this, which feels kind of dangerous for a Jedi, right? Historically, so like, it's really, really important to her that she saves Ezra. Right. Like, he had said he counted on her. Like we've said, it's really like it's weighing on her all this time. And so I don't know if that'll make a difference or whatever, but I think it'd be really cool if I don't know. I say this now. I may regret saying it. I think it could be really cool if all of a sudden it just like clicks. You know what I mean? And like she's an incredible warrior already. And again, if she can get back to her strength and her Mandalorian roots and her and remember that stuff, it's like, and add to that now that she is a capable Force user.
Yeah.
Now, again, being a Jedi comes with a sense of peace that I don't know she will ever have.
Right.
But, anyway, I find that fascinating. Yeah. I'd love to see that thing play out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, I think we probably should jump forward since we're still in the first scene of the episode.
Sure. but this was a theme that's been brewing, and I'm really interested to see it play out. Yeah.
Cool.
But you don't want to. You got nothing else on this one. We can move on to the next.
No,
one.
I don't think so. Yeah. So next we're going to talk about. Go ahead.
I'm the reason that these things take an hour and 20 minutes or whatever.
That is accurate.
Basically,
I won't deny that.
This one won't. This one won't take that long. I just, there's this real. I wish they'd be a little more clear, but she sort of is Ahsoka trying to make Sabine an actual Jedi. I just don't know yet. You know what I mean? It maybe what she's saying is, I will take you on to be my Padawan, and I'll try to teach you as much as I can, or like I'll help you learn as much as you can. Maybe stretch her as much as she's able into this other world,
right?
With the hopes that it makes a significant difference for her, in what all this. But like, Ahsoka isn't even a Jedi. She keeps making that distinction. I'm just anyway.
Right.
So, the one thing that like the prerequisite for being a Jedi was that they were strong in the Force, right? That's how they picked out the babies to be Jedi,
Yeah.
That's how this happened. That's how Anakin became a Jedi. The Force was very strong in him. So it's like, what has caused this? Is it just that like, like, oh yeah, whatever. My friend would make a great waiter because he's my friend. You know what I mean? It's like, oh yeah, she'll be a great Jedi because I love her. It's like,
right.
I don't. So anyway, I don't.
Well, you said yourself, Ahsoka even says, I don't need her to be a Jedi. You need to be yourself. She's not trying.
Right,
I mean, she admits it to Huyang.
You're right, but she's still calling her a Padawan, right?
Yeah.
And they're still talking about
she's training in the Force.
Jedi
I mean, I think the determination that a Jedi is a specific person who uses the Force maybe at a certain level, and she's not trying to get her to a Jedi status. Yeah. It's like, let's just get you skilled in using the Force. But we'll see.
I wonder if there's just a piece of the puzzle we haven't seen yet. I mean, if there's going to be something that they'll
very
bring
possible
up that'll make it all click. I'm hoping.
For sure. Yeah.
All right, so you want to move on?
Probably we should.
You want to talk about the senators?
Sure. Yeah, so next we see Hera meeting with the senators, which, by the way, starts off immediately. I don't remember what the one senator's name was, but I disliked him immediately. Because Mon Mothma, which was so fun to see her. I mean, it's always fun to see a character that we've been seeing in other things. And
she's been in so many things now. It's great. It's fun to see those connections.
Well, and she's the actress they have just looks, I mean, like, throwback to Mon Mothma from, like, other eras. It's a great fit. I mean, she looks like her. So, anyway. But, she and Hera are kind of catching up. Jacen gets mentioned, which we haven't seen him yet, but that's kind of a which is kind of fun. And then this other senator's like, excuse me, senators, can we get on this? Like, we're already running late. And I'm like, yeah, I don't like you very much. So right off the bat, he's kind of annoying me. And in reality, it's abundantly clear he's already not wanting to talk to Hera. He doesn't want to hear what she has to say. She then explains everything they encountered on Corellia, and and even Mon Mothma's like, well, didn't you take everyone, captive? And isn't this all cleared up, right? Yeah. And it's like, well, but no, they took this significant piece of equipment. We think there's something bigger going on. Of course, at this point, we don't know about the Eye of Sion. They haven't discovered it. That information has not been shared with Hera. All she knows is what happened on Corellia, and that they're headed to do that, and that they need backup. And as always, is one of the things I said, just the heads in the sand, it annoys me because it's like they're already turning a blind eye when this has happened before. You and I, Nate, kind of talked about before we started of this. It's very reminiscent of, early on Jedi Council kind of being like, you guys there's no chance there's a Sith Lord out there. We would know it. All this stuff from early episodes. Early, whatever.
Episode 1.
Yeah.
Episode 1.
Episode
they
1,
really doubted that the Sith had come back, and
yeah,
they're overconfident, right?
Yeah. But and I think that's what's crazy is that the Empire has just fallen. Like, this isn't that far from this, oppression that covered the galaxy. And it's like all of a sudden Senator's like, oh no, like there's no way there's more going on. We would know it. Everything's fine. You just want to get Ezra back. Because that's the problem, is then what comes up is, oh, we need to get Thrawn. And then they immediately go, oh, well, Hera, all you care about is Ezra. And it's like, well, no.
And that's
the problem is she also reacts to it, which doesn't help.
Well, she's probably, the truth is she's probably been campaigning for that for a while anyway,
Right.
It's not like this is the first time she's brought up Ezra. They're giving her a hard time because, like, this is clearly something that she won't give up on.
Well, I'll say, I mean, yes, probably, but I also question that a little bit because up until a certain point, they thought Thrawn and Ezra were dead. Like, it hasn't been that long ago that they didn't think anything was out there, right? And it's just been in recent, in theory, it's been like recently that I know. You can tell them.
So Rachel gave me a hard time before we started because my wife was texting me and my phone was dinging. I said, all right, I've got it on silent now. Anyway, it's like
I just had an alarm go off. My bad. My phone's on silent, but the alarm went off.
We need to make a cute little video about keeping your phones on silent during the movie.
The pod.
But let's not get off.
So anyway,
off the topic.
But yeah, I mean, I think the concept in my mind is that it hasn't been that long. It can't be that she's been campaigning that long for it, because didn't they until recently think that probably Ezra and Thrawn were both dead? That it was they didn't exist anywhere else. Do you know what I mean? Or no?
Yeah, I mean, I think that nobody knew anything. I mean, all that they know is that the Purrgil that they knew have the power of like hyper speed flight, whatever,
right?
Light speed. They knew that. They knew that it took them away. They knew that Ezra was part of the sacrifice that took him away. So it's like.
Sure.
It felt like, that might have been them dying, or who knows what. But the only people that we've heard talk about it before this series, I think, the return of Thrawn came up between Moff Gideon and his like shadow council or whatever, the council of evil overlords or whatever evil name they've come up with for themselves. It was so silly to me. But they have talked about it because they think Thrawn is coming back. Now, I don't know why they think that. Maybe Morgan Elsbeth is feeding them this stuff by some premonition through the Force. Or she said Thrawn's been reaching out to her through space and time.
Right.
So I don't know.
That's Mandalorian. So that's recent as well, right? I mean,
yeah. I mean that's pretty recent. Yeah, but I don't know how long that conversation has been happening. But as far as I know, I mean, we haven't seen Ahsoka and Sabine and everybody. Oh, you know what? I'm wrong. That came up in season 2 when we first meet Ahsoka because she's going after Morgan, and her question for Morgan is, "Where is Grand Admiral Thrawn?"
That's right.
So I believe that would be the start of the stone rolling, right? So that was Mandalorian season 2. Still generally fairly recent. I don't know how long Ahsoka's been trying to figure this out. Maybe it's been a while, but.
But yeah. So Hera's questioning. I mean, to have
my guess just is. Hera operated as sort of a motherly figure to the whole crew of the Ghost, right?
Of course.
Especially, Ezra, because he was young and his parents were actually dead and all that. So, like, I think
Kanan was so instrumental in, I mean, like, Kanan was training him, right? And that was, I mean, Hera and Kanan kind of took him under their wing, sort of. And anyway,
Right, but my point just is, I think whether or not they had proof that he was dead, Hera would have been looking. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, I don't think that it was like, well, we all are sure that he's dead, so I'm just going to do my own thing now. I'm sure that this has been, if not, if not like her front and center focus for a long time, but like maybe her, back burner project that she's been like, whenever she has a chance, she's looking into things and trying to track things down and stuff. I don't know. Clearly, Sabine was trying to do this for a while. I don't know how much Ahsoka's been wrapped up in it, but I think it's been happening for a minute. But that said, clearly these guys are short-sighted, these senators and everything. And like you brought up, that was a very good point, that like it feels very similar to the overconfidence and the blindness of the Jedi Council. And I mean, like, the blindness is a good way to talk about it. Is they've talked about how, like, the dark side was clouding their vision and they didn't realize it.
Yeah.
In episode 2 or 3, early episode 3, I think there's this moment where they're like, "Yeah, we are unable to tell what's going on anymore." It was a big deal.
Yeah.
Anyway, senators, if they're not on the take, which crossed my mind because all of this, we know all this is going to come crashing down eventually with the New Republic.
Right.
Sadly, we found that there are mixed loyalties within the ranks of the New Republic, and a lot of people that were just sort of like keeping quiet until they have their moment to stand up for the Empire again. So.
Right.
Who knows?
Well, and it's interesting.
What's
even
bureaucracy
Hera,
and what's politics and what is like sabotage. Who knows?
Sure. Hera, even again, the senator that I can't stand. Hera even kind of calls him out, and she goes, "Did you fight?" And he was like, "No."
Oh man.
And so she's like,
"So were you in?
So you
were
just
you
waited
in the war?"
to see who won. Mm-hmm.
Oh man.
And it was this like kind of like woo, she got him. But the truth is, she makes an excellent point. And like you said, I mean, just with this potential of like, where do loyalties lie? He was with whoever won is kind of the point she made. And he didn't really deny it, So that makes you wonder, is he just with whoever is the most powerful? Is this like, if he starts to get the sense that something else is rising up, is he like, well, I better side back with them because that's the safer route, whatever. Yeah.
Yeah. It was a real, like, gauntlet thrown, man, when she said that, and like the quiet silence and the two of them staring at each other. I love that she said it though, and that's part of the problem. Is it like not everybody in the galaxy was part of the rebellion? Very few people were. A lot of people were under the thumb of them, but like a lot of people were getting rich because of them. So like, I don't know. There's a theme. I'll say, especially since Disney took over. If you want to dig into The Last Jedi, which I don't even know if I would recommend, it's kind of a rough one. The whole Canto Bight scene, there's this real, like, the rich are awful sort of a perspective. Yeah. Now, that's not to say that represented all of the rich in the Star Wars galaxy or anything, but that's the only chunk of the rich that they wanted to represent, is that they're just out here, like spending their money, goofing around while, this slave boy is being beaten down here and like they're racing the animals and like they're anti-environment. And there are all these like, man, some like political leanings starting to show up a bit. But I do think that that's something that's become a theme now in Star Wars. So whether or not I think that it's, kind or accurate or whatever as a general rule in the world, it is something that it's like, okay, so maybe that's what this is aiming at, is it's like, a lot of the wealthy people in the galaxy were just like, we'll sell weapons to the good guys and the bad guys and whatever, or like, the Empire, oh yeah, they're making me rich. Like, they're buying my stuff. I'm able to sell to this group or whatever. I mean, like, it was just kind of this idea that with money, with, the power of the Empire, they can just do whatever. So, anyway, so that's a good point.
Yeah. So then Hera finishes her conversation. I don't know if you want to move into, I'm not sure if you want to mention the Jacen anymore, but I don't know if you want to mention
Jacen. Yeah, I want to mention Jacen really quick. So first of all, this is our first sight of Jacen. He comes run down the hall with Chopper, and he's saying, like, oh, is Sabine going to be a Jedi? Chopper told him, whatever.
Doesn't he say Aunt Sabine?
Aunt Sabine. Calls her Aunt Sabine. Really cute. And he looks like a cute kid. His hair's a little green. They've bailed on his skin being green, which it was, I think, at the end of Rebels. I could be wrong, but I think his skin was green.
I don't remember, but yeah.
If I'm
surprised
wrong,
they wouldn't have kept that up. Yeah. I don't remember enough.
I don't know. But he was, part human and part whatever.
Oh gosh.
Oh my gosh.
You'll have to find it and just plaster it across the But
anyway, so Jacen, I'm interested to see where this character goes. His father was Kanan Jarrus, Jedi Knight, and so I don't know if he's going to make the leap and eventually be a Jedi, if he's got that Force sensitivity. But who knows if that's even a prerequisite anymore? So I'm interested to see what happens. But moving on from that, real quick, I'll jump right through when they get to the Eye of Sion. I didn't like the fighters that they were using. They looked too much like World War II ally fighter planes. They look like the P-51 Mustang was the one that I thought of. But like it's like they chopped off the tail of it and they kept the wings and they put a different nose on it. But I was like, it just looks, it looked too familiar. And I know that like they like to reuse real things on the show, you know, and like it's like, oh, that's like a wink and a nod, whatever. But it can't be recognizable that much. Like that, I had sort of a problem with it. It's a small thing, but
and I kind of wish. I mean, this might be silly, but I'm like, wouldn't they be probably repurposing old TIE fighters and stuff? Like, why is it that what we're seeing is like this still rough looking ship, but and they all match, but they're not what we've seen before. So it's like, where did they find these ships and what are they putting together? Versus like, wouldn't they be repurposing ships that already exist that we've seen in the universe before? Because even like old X-Wings or something, that it's like, wouldn't they have these old ships that are like pieced together versus, you know, because again, they're making this Eye of Sion with pieces of ships that they've pulled from the shipyard, right? So it's like, anyway, I just think that's bizarre to me that they wouldn't.
Again, it's a great point, and I think, you know, the on Earth version it's more fun to design new ships than use old ones. Sure. But also in this, like, I don't know, Morgan was some part of the Empire, but like the design of the Eye of Sion is not Imperial looking. It's sort of weird and like kind of whimsical, and like it doesn't look like a Death Star or like a, you know, like a Star Destroyer or anything like that. So I wonder if, and like, you know, she's using droids there, like the controls, the interior of that thing that we've seen, it doesn't look familiar. I wonder,
it's not.
And I've said this before, I said this to you, I should say, I guess, Rach, but I wonder if all of this is, you know, like, I wonder if she's got a secondary agenda, if maybe this other universe or this other galaxy is where the Witches of Dathomir came from or something like that.
Right.
Sorry, my
it'd be interesting to see.
But like, I don't know. I think that there could be some other things going on. The design of the ships there, none of them are familiar.
Sure.
So like, I wonder if maybe this is, well, where did they come up with the plans for this transgalactic ship anyway? You know, there are all these unanswered questions that may come about as the mystery, you know,
as time goes on. Yeah. Well, and so we come in, I'm just going to kind of hop in here, and as they come into the Denab system and are met with these fighters, whatever they are, one of the things that you had mentioned was just this observation that, you know, Sabine is then fighting like a rookie, like a, you know, this is her first, she's all excited when she shoots one down, but and one of the things I had said was so it's like, you know, they're, again, like you said, they're taking her back to be able to build her up in some ways, but as we've discussed in other episodes of this, that you know, in some ways there's also too a loss of her abilities and her confidence and her everything because of whatever happened in between, you know, the end of Rebels and now, you know, that we're not really sure entirely what happened with her and Ahsoka. We're not really entirely sure what happened with her training. We're not entirely sure what she's been doing since then. So it could be years since she's fired any kind of, you know, you know,
there's
weapon like chapter. That. And it's like, and so it still feels like, yes, it's a little bit like they're taking her back further maybe than she would be, but it could have been a really long time since she's fought like that, in a sense that she is more like, oh, I still got it. Like, oh, I got it. Like, this is exciting, you know, or whatever. But anyway.
Yeah. And again, I mean, the show wouldn't be as interesting without some character growth and that sort of thing. And I'm sure that's what they're doing. And
sure.
I think it's going to pay off in the end. I just, these little things feel a little odd because, you know, she was an expert at this stuff in Rebels. And so it just feels like a few years have gone by and she just knows she's doing. But it's cool to see her pick up the pieces a bit. There was a line that I thought was really cool of what's his name? Huyang said that the Jedi Archive spoke of hyperspace lanes between galaxies that were built by the Purrgil. And I was like, so the Jedi knew that there were these other galaxies and they reached, or whatever. It's kind of cool to think about. The Jedi Order has lasted so long, and there have been so many thousands of Jedi, and, you know, like Huyang being like the only like sort of survivor right now of most of that history. It's like, it's just cool, these little tidbits you get to hear. I thought that was fun.
Yeah.
We still are both
we
on
see them.
team. Sorry, I want to say real quick. We're both very much on team.
No, go ahead. No.
Bring Baylan back to the good side, right?
Yes,
I just
most
I
definitely.
can't say enough. I can't say enough how much I want to see Baylan come back and be a good guy. So we'll see if it
make
works
his
out.
hesitation so obvious. I mean, they really. It feels like everything that everything he says is with a hint of like hesitation or disappointment or whatever. And it's like it couldn't possibly not be on purpose. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That they're giving us that
either they're
feeling
building
of,
towards something, or they're trying to get us to hope that that'll happen. So
true. That's true. Yeah.
All right. So let's close on this next thought. I have, and this is not like I came up with this idea or anything, but I saw someone on TikTok had gone through and translated all of the little inscriptions underneath the planets and the end credits that roll, and it shows all these planets. It's this sort of like star chart of some kind, and like they're all pretty much planets that we know. Lothal's in there, and Dathomir was in there. There were anyway a handful of these planets that they visited in the show, and some that I think they'll still visit probably. But all these lines lead to one point, right? And the Purgil were on this in the credits there somewhere and everything. And I don't want to pretend like this is an original thought. I'm sure other people thought the same thing. But my suspicion is that all those lines are representing hyperspace lanes, routes, whatever. They come back to that one point, and it's some sort of central hub in the universe or whatever. Whether or not it's the world between worlds, because that's what I've heard some people suggest, or just it's a planet that like some species originated in or something like that. Maybe it's where the Force came from or something. I don't know.
Sure.
But I've struggled this whole time to figure out how did they know where Thrawn and Ezra were going to be. You know what I mean? Like they're like, hey, we found this map in this ancient witch, stronghold. But it's like, how's that going to lead to them? You know what I mean? It's like Indiana Jones finding a map in a pharaoh's tomb and being like, I know where Hoffa is now. It's just like, it wouldn't make any sense. Whatever.
It's a good comparison. Doesn't make sense, but
like
or it doesn't fit with.
Yeah.
That was a good one. It doesn't really fit with what we think about as like what the purpose is. Yeah.
Indy was a little pre-Hoffa anyway, but anyway. So all that is to say, point. Oh, is he?
Yeah.
Now I'm testing my American history. Anyway, so we'll see what happens. But I'm excited about the little hints they're dropping here and there and everything. You got any other thoughts? Any last minute hopes or dreams for the next episodes?
I don't think so. I think I still just a final thought about Baylan and even Shin, who is a weirdo, but like I love the way they question things. Adams. She is a Wednesday. That's a great way to describe it. I love the way they question everything with Morgan. That they're not just like blatantly, or not just like, what's the word I'm looking for? Whatever.
Yeah, they're
following
not just
blindly, I guess.
Following.
Yeah. Mindlessly, yeah. That they have a genuine concern for the things she suggests, the things she says. Even if they follow orders, she walks away and they discuss it for a minute as far as like what they think about it,
they haven't reached a point yet
a lot.
where they disagree. Yeah. Sorry.
Yeah. That speaks highly of, I think that, again, that potential for them to come back or come to the light side, come to the good and come back to, Jedi versus this mercenary stuff. So I'm hoping that that'll happen. That's what I'm pulling for. So anyway, it was a good episode. It was a very good story continuation episode. Not a lot happened as far as like massive events, but we got a lot of content to progress the story. So yeah.
And we talked a
next
little.
Week.
It was very short, and I have concerns about the length of these episodes. I mean, Kenobi was one that just felt like they couldn't scrape together enough content to make a series. You know what I mean? Like, I feel a little of that here sometimes, that it's like some of these things are like, that would have been, like a 15-minute stretch during a movie, but all that said, we're not through with the whole thing yet. So let's see how it plays out. Anyway. For Pew Pew Time, I'm Nate.
And I'm Rach.
And we'll see you next time.
Pew pew. I forgot my pew pew.
Better late than never.
You know.
Yeah. They're good pews.